the headlines. Well, Europe has a new European Commission. Yay! I, for one, welcome our new boring overlords. And wait, it's not a mirror. There we go. Right. New EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker was sworn in with the rest of the 28 commissioners on the 1st of November, with about as much fanfare as an international darts championship. Correction, there was much more enthusiasm for the International Darts Championship. And of course, there was a farewell ceremony for outgoing Commission President Jose Manuel Barroso, as well as Van Rompuy. But Barroso, who's 10 years on the job, was rewarded by Angela Merkel with two porcelain plates, one for each. Barroso will add the plates to his Nobel Peace Prize for quietly behind the scenes keeping the Eurozone together. But everyone agreed that the porcelain plates are actually a much more fitting gesture for the work they've done. In other news, the European Central Bank announced 10% of the 130 banks failed the so-called stress test to see if they could withstand a financial crisis, with the highest percentage of failing banks in Italy. Greece was thrilled. Good job, Greece. French cultural minister, she has admitted that she has not read any works of Nobel Literature Prize winning author Patrick Modiano. And in fact, she admitted that she has not read any books in 2 years, causing the French Twitter sphere to explode with criticism. This is Minister Pellerin, who followed up by saying the reason she hasn't read a book in 2 years is because she's mostly working 14-hour days, responding to French people's complaints and legal issues. The French Twitter sphere replied that, they would have heard that second part of the statement, but they didn't have time. In financial news, banks may have violated pledges. Tune in for next week's story. Banks definitely violated pledges. And now that IS beheadings and the Ebola threat are on the decline, news ratings are falling. The International New York Times responded with this front page: the horror before the beheadings, just in time for Halloween. We hope you're all suitably scared. One of this year's most popular costumes for Halloween was the Ebola safety gear, including sexy Ebola nurse costume. The odd thing here is, there must be a label on this costume saying warning does not protect against Ebola, meaning that if you actually need that warning on your costume, you may have somehow contracted Ebola already. But the International New York Times, after their scary headline, they followed up with a great bit of journalism juxtaposing fast food workers in America, who earn about $9 an hour, with fast food workers in Denmark, who earn the equivalent of $20 an hour. Burger King responded to this article saying that, since they have to pay European workers so much more, the franchise in Denmark is not as profitable, meaning basically that European workers are benefiting from the low wages paid to U.S. workers. Basically, U.S. workers suffering so white Europeans can have their well-being. To celebrate this time-honored arrangement, this week's kids' meal is 12 Years a Slave. In Hungary, right-wing populist President Viktor Orbán is proposing to introduce Europe's first internet tax, only 50 cents per gigabyte. And the Hungarian public said no! After an outcry online and massive protests this past weekend, Viktor Orbán now says he will not levy an internet tax. Instead, he's planning to ban the internet altogether. Now it's time to check in with this week's good news, bad news, and the theme this week is election results. Tunisia, the birthplace of the Arab Spring, held elections in which secularist parties won. The bad news: Tunisian fundamentalists couldn't vote because they've already left to join the fight in Syria. But the good news, in Ukraine, election abnormalities were reported at a minimum. Election observers reported they saw no abnormalities, but the bad news, they did not include the Russian separatist areas to the east bordering on Russia. They didn't really bother to vote. The good news is if the separatist provinces don't fit into Russia, they'd make a perfect match with much of America that can't seem to be able to vote. Ah, America, where the voter turnout reflects the passion that we have for democracy. We love democracy, except on election day, then either I was too busy to vote or these people waiting in line actually couldn't vote because they didn't have the proper ID. So bad news. the Russian separatist region of Donetsk is now set to hold their own separate elections for their own separatist leader. The good news, David Bowie issued a special plea saying, "Stay with us, Donetsk." Bad news, Russia has agreed to recognize these separatist elections of Donetsk and Luhansk as legitimate. But there is good news, the EU managed to somehow broker a deal. This was widely unexpected, but there was a lot of unpaid debts from Ukraine to Russia, and now, thanks to the EU, Russia will now provide heat and gas to the Ukraine. Who brokered the deal? German outgoing energy commissioner, this guy, Germany's Günther Oettinger. Bad news, he's done as energy commissioner. But the good news, he is going to continue as the new commissioner for the digital economy. And that brings us